to INCAP, or International Cultural Arts Program, where we learn about different cultures, holidays, and people through the minds of the most influential, creative, and iconic people in their industry. My name is Mackenzie, and today we are going to be talking to the legend and ballet master, Meelis Pakri. How are you today, Meelis?
I'm good. How are you? Good to see you.
Good. Sorry, what?
Good to see you.
It's good to see you too. So let's just get started. What age did you start taking ballet?
Well, I got into ballet when I was 10 years old. I was going to a elementary school where the focus was on German language and, many other things like, I did also folk dancing in Estonia where I'm from, as well as I played soccer and ice hockey, sang in the boys choir. And my PE teacher told my mom that she saw something in me that she thought I had talent for ballet. So she recommended I'd go to the auditions when I was 10 years old. So
nice.
That's where it all started.
And 10 is pretty late to start ballet, isn't it? Or is that normally the age?
Yeah, I mean, the world has changed since I was 10 years old, and now everything seems to be earlier, if you know what I mean. But that actually was, we did, when I grew up in Soviet Union, and it was very set that ballet started at 10 years old from 4th grade on. Sometimes kids did like preparatory classes when they were younger, but usually, at least everybody that was my generation or my kind of roughly my age, they all started ballet at 10 years old, yeah.
Nice. So where did you train in your ballet career?
Well, like I mentioned earlier, I started my ballet training in Tallinn, Estonia, my home country. And I did 7 years in that school. And then when I got really serious about ballet, I realized that, I needed to perhaps challenge myself with a bigger, more famous, more challenging school. And so I went to Bogdanova School in St. Petersburg, Russia, where I did my last 3 years of training and graduated in '86 and came back to Estonia.
Wow, I would love to go to that school. I'm not a serious ballet dancer. I'm more of an actor and singer, but I've heard so many great things about that school.
It's pretty awesome.
Yeah. So how does one even become a ballet master?
Well, my path, I can really only talk about my path, obviously. When I started teaching very young, actually, when I was about 17, I got some back problems. It was discovered that I had scoliosis and just other things, and my back was sometimes, out of commission. So instead of sitting out partnering classes at Bogdanova School, my teacher, Nikolai Serebrennikov, actually had me assist him. Like, he would give me assignments to, put together an exercise and then teach it to my classmates. So I started already kind of doing that, and then I started actually teaching ballet when I was 21. I went back to Estonia and taught partnering at Tallinn Ballet School. So my whole career was kind of like parallel to things. I was dancing and teaching at the same time. So when it was time for me to hang it up, like they say, it was a pretty logical and straightforward transition that I went from being a principal dancer to become a ballet master. So kind of instead of doing the steps, making others do the steps and just kind of putting them through the basics.
Nice. That's wonderful that teacher did that for you.
Well, it was just, I never had no idea that he was pushing me in that direction. I was sort of annoyed, like, I wanted to sit there and like nurse my back.
Yes.
Like, come on, do this. And then when I graduated from ballet school, he actually offered me to stay on and become his assistant.
Wow, that's wonderful.
And I sort of was like, no, sorry, I want to dance. So I went back home to Estonia.
So how long have you had the title ballet master?
Well, ballet master, I think I became a ballet master in 2001 when I retired from Colorado Ballet.
All right.
So pretty much from that on. But, before that, I was just a teacher, guest teacher, company teacher, whatever, sometimes coach. But ballet master I became in 2001.
Wonderful. Now, since this is a Halloween event and this event is in October, Could you possibly tell me anything about your experience with Dracula the ballet?
Absolutely, yes. I had the privilege and the most, it was quite an experience. I did Michael Pink's Dracula with Colorado Ballet. What happened was that I retired in 2001, and that fall of 2001, we had Dracula in our repertoire. And, I did a small acting part in it, and it was, and coached some of the parts, and it was all nice. But I was just oftentimes standing backstage, either watching rehearsals or shows, and I was thinking, damn, I wish I was still dancing because it was so, like, it was such a cool part. It was like amazing costume scenery, very kind of like edgy music, and just like really, like totally not your classical ballet thing. I mean, classical ballet steps, but, and then I told my boss, Martin Friedman, that, Martin, if you're ever into dancer, if you need me to come back from retirement, you know,
You're the guy.
yeah, and so 3 years later, I was already 3 years into my being ballet master. He approached me. We were teaching summer together. I was like, Meelis, can you get in shape? I was like, what? Can you get in shape in 3 months? I was like, for what? For Dracula. And I was like, oh, okay. So I just went on serious workout regimen, stretching, whatever, and ended up doing Dracula.
Wonderful.
Colorado Ballet. Yeah.
What was your favorite part about being part of Dracula?
Well, really, it was, like I said, I did some small parts and in coaching. It was all really, it was fulfilling and it was interesting because it was, challenging and different. But Dracula, just being the Dracula, I remember the transformation. I would sit down at the makeup table and I would start the makeup and put the wig on, which usually take about an hour and a half. And then just, you squint your eyes and look in the mirror and it freaks you out how scary you actually look. And that transformation then, and also just, there is this one part when Dracula's first entrance, he comes down, kind of enters the scene. It's just, there was so many, I couldn't say only one thing, but just the transformation and just being something so different from any other part that I ever danced in my career.
With saying that you kind of freaked yourself out, that kind of reminded me how, I don't know if you've seen the movie Maleficent, but Angelina Jolie's daughter had to be young Aurora because all of the younger kids were so freaked out by her that they couldn't do it. So it had to be her daughter because they knew mommy was behind the makeup.
Yeah. No, actually, speaking of freaked out, I was rehearsing one scene in the studio once, and it was with 3 vampires. And afterwards, one of the girls went and told my wife. They happened to run into each other. It's like, Meelis is freaking me out. He's so real in the rehearsal. So it was, these kind of things are really awesome.
Would you ever want to do something like that again?
I would love to, but I think the time has passed on. I'm 55 and, not really done anything on that level in 15 years and just, in ideal world, definitely, but I'm being realistic here.
What was the first ballet that you ever performed in?
I think it was Cinderella. I was probably 2nd or 3rd year at ballet school in Estonia, and we had the brand new Cinderella production come out, and we did pages. Just like, I think it was during the ballroom scene. We just came on and just handed some props to somebody, and that was the end of it. But that
was. What has ever been your favorite place or theater that you've ever performed in?
Well, there were a lot of really cool places. I was privileged and fortunate enough to go and perform. Like just touring all over South America, Central America, Cuba, Mexico, Syria, blah, blah, blah. But I would think probably one of the coolest things for me was when I was with Colorado Ballet and we were about to do Martha Graham's Appalachian Spring. And the guy who was in charge of the casting for Appalachian Spring came to audition the company. And he decided that he wanted to use me as a guest artist to dance with Martha Graham. That was fun for me because it was some anniversary of Appalachian Spring's first performance, which was then performed at the Library of Congress in DC.
Wow.
So that was quite, like it was like number one, doing Martha Graham. That was so unique, and also just kind of rehearsing with the company for 4 weeks, just kind of being in a totally different, in a modern world, and just a lot of people who had worked or were like pretty much brought up by Martha Graham, and then actually going and dancing at Library of Congress where the original Appalachian Spring took place. That was just it was probably just the most unique experience I had.
That sounds amazing. Has there ever been a certain theater that you've ever visited, say in a different country, or a theater that you have performed in that you would ever want to either perform in or visit again?
Definitely the visit again would be Covent Garden in London, because I worked 7 years at Royal Ballet School, and our students danced regularly with the company, and we did our year-end performances, and it just has it holds such a a special place in my heart. So Covent Garden in London, definitely.
London is definitely one of the top of my bucket lists because it's so beautiful. My mom's like, "You've never been. How do you know?" And I'm like, "By the pictures."
No, to visit, it's amazing. Living can be a different story, because like in any city really, but visiting, amazing.
So how many countries have you actually performed in?
I never have counted how many countries I've performed in. I've been to 44 countries, I think, but I
Wow.
would say probably 25 plus.
Nice. I would love to be able to do that. So is ballet any different in other countries other than the US?
Yes, there is, obviously America is a relatively young country, because, if I give you a reference, the ballet school I trained in, Bogdanova School, is actually older than US of A. You know what I mean? So, there is much more tradition, there is much more just like roots as far as like appreciation, and just, different theater going tradition. Like people in America go to see a production, whereas in England, in Estonia, in Russia, they go to see a performer, a cast. Like, let's say there's a second cast, people go to see the cast. So it's much more, I would say, that ballet dancers are not quite like, NFL players in US are, but not far off. They're have much more celebrity status, much more, they're held in much higher esteem than in US. It's just, because it's such old world. Europe is so much older, and just there's a different tradition. So when you dance in Europe, you feel much more appreciated and much more visible. In US can be sometimes, the other things overshadow.
I did want to ask you, you talked a lot about your former teachers. Who has been the most influential teacher that you've had, and why?
I would say there have been 3. My partnering teacher, Nikolai Serebrennikov at Vaganova School, because, he pretty much, unbeknownst to me, set me up for my teaching career. Then Konstantin Shatilov, my ballet teacher at Vaganova School, he really, I went to Vaganova School at the age of 17. I was very raw because, I had a lot of catching up to do, and he just molded me slowly. And he saw something in me, and he did not push me too much or did not get impatient with me. He just kind of molded me over the 3 years that I was with him. And the third teacher would be Tiit Härm, who is a former star in Estonian National Ballet, and he was a company director for several stints actually. He was my mentor in Estonia. He pretty much rehearsed all the ballets with me, and he was literally, we were in the same dressing room in the opera house, so we had spent a lot of time together. And he really made me the artist, the dancer that I became.
That's wonderful. So there's a lot of misconceptions about dance that I've heard over the years. What do you think is the most common misconception that you hear about ballet or ballet dancers?
Well, one thing is that ballet is not a real profession. You know, I ran into it quite a few times when I first came to America. You know, I would meet somebody new in some social setting, and they would be, "So, what do you do for a living?" "I'm a dancer, I'm a ballet dancer." "I understand you dance, but what do you do for a living?" It's like, I earn my living with dancing, dummy. I pay my rent. Uh, so that to me, that was like the biggest thing. That I was just literally, for years, it just blew my mind that somebody would be that ignorant and that, you know, narrow-minded.
I feel like with a lot of arts that happens. I mean, I've had a few times where they're like, okay, so what do you do? And I'm like, well, I'm an actress and a singer. And they're like, cool. Like, they don't really
Exactly.
understand it. They're like, oh, she's probably just going to grow out of it in a few years, or
Exactly. Yeah.
she's
Yeah.
going to go to Hollywood and just come back because that's what everybody does. So I feel like that's a very big misconception about everybody in the
For
arts.
sure. Yes. I mean, it's unfortunate, but it's true.
Yes. Let's see. Who is the youngest person you've ever taught, or the oldest person you've ever taught?
The youngest would be definitely a couple of 7-year-olds. I taught in Montana, in Great Falls, Montana. I used to go teach there all the time. One of my dear friends used to be the director of the school there when her husband was stationed in Great Falls, Montana. So, you know, I usually would teach kids kind of high school age or middle school age. And then one time they scheduled me to teach the little ones. And it was hilarious because they were absolutely scared of me. This big guy shows up there. So I had to crack a lot of jokes and just kind of break the ice. But the oldest, actually I haven't really, I've never taught adult classes. So oldest probably would be somebody, I don't know, at the end of their career, maybe when they're in their early 40s.
All right. um, does your little boy take ballet?
He does not.
He does not. Not following in Papa's footsteps.
Well, to be honest with you, my wife is also a dancer, former dancer, and we kind of jokingly decided, you know, two was enough per family. And you know, I want obviously if he one day decides that he wants to do, he's been around ballet. He saw, he sat in my lap and watched the full Nutcracker at Houston Ballet when I worked there.
Oh, it's so much fun.
So he's been, you know, in many Harrod rehearsals and shows. So he's seen it, and he sees sometimes my students' videos, whatever. But he plays soccer, he plays piano, and you know, so far that's been what he wants to do. And if one day he comes around and says, "Dad, I want to do ballet," then I have to deal with it. Cross that bridge then.
Of course. Um, so you talked a little bit about learning other ballets, not ballet, sorry, dance styles. What other dance styles do you know?
Well, honestly, I would not be as presumptuous as say I know any other dance styles. Really, I mean, my forte has always been classical ballet, Russian-based classical ballet, that I was trained in. I happen to believe that it's very fundamental, where you can then kind of, you know, um, venture out into doing Balanchine, Graham. You know, it really kind of good basics, good foundation that you can then have the ability to venture into other things. But my whole career, I pretty much done. I was in classical ballet companies and did some contemporary and some modern stuff. It was always, we never did classes in that, you know, I don't know, Immerse Cunningham, anything like that. So I've never been really exposed to that. So it was just usually just repertoire. So my thing has pretty much been classical ballet my whole life.
Nice. And classical ballet, I can very much say it's very hard. So it takes a long time to know everything.
Yeah, it has. It's harder. It's also very logical. If you get the essence, it's actually a lot easier than a lot of people think. Not easier, but more fluid, I should say.
Yes. Let's see. If you weren't a dancer, what would you want to be? Like as a kid, did you have any other dreams, or was it mostly ballet from the age of 10?
Well, actually, speaking of ballet, from age of 10, when I joined the ballet school in Estonia, I did not like it at all. I hated it.
Oh,
I hated it because it was, I grew up, I learned how to ice skate when I was 4 years old. And I never played any organized sports like, in America, you have travel teams and stuff like that. I played with my buddies from my street. We had our own ice hockey team. We had our own soccer team. So we'd go to like communal tournaments and stuff. So I was very, in the wintertime, I joked that I always was walking around with a hockey stick. In the summertime, always with a soccer ball. So that was my passion. So very active, running around all the time. And then when the ballet started, literally, facing the bar, doing slow movements, slow tandos, and it was boring to me. So I actually completely disliked it, but because it was also, like the regular academics, I just carried on. And I had friends in school, so it was just kind of something that was familiar, comfortable. But then at the age of about 14 or 15, I had this teacher who was very passionate, and it kind of rubbed off. And then that's when I became, borderline fanatical about ballet. But if I never did ballet, I would definitely would have loved to have been a soccer player or
nice.
football player, like we call it in Europe.
Yes, of course. Which it makes so much more sense to call it football. I mean, your foot is touching the ball.
Because you actually play with the foot, and you're not supposed to play with your hand.
Yeah, it makes so much more sense. All right, let's see. What is your normal day like as a ballet master?
Well, I'm a ballet teacher at the Harriet Conservatory in Boca Raton right now. So it's like ballet master, ballet teacher. So my regular day is, our schedule, because it's a boarding school. So our students do academics first thing in the morning, and the ballet classes start at like 12:30 noon afternoon. So in the morning I get up. Sometimes I take my son to school, or do cutting the grass or something around the house, because everything grows so fast in southern Florida, so you need to always attend to those things. And then go teach at 12:40, and usually the day goes till depending on the day, 4, 5:30. And then I go very often pick my son up from school, take him to soccer practice, and when my wife works, pretty much do the dinner, bedtime, and all that stuff. So
What is the longest day you? Oh, sorry.
Go ahead. No.
What is the longest day you've ever had to work?
The longest I ever had to work was when I was judging for YGP in Atlanta, and we got there, and there was a snowstorm coming in, and as politicians, in my opinion, often do, they tried to be too safe, so they shut the campus down it was at Georgia Tech campus, this competition, so they closed the campus for 24 hours because it was going to be terrible, ice, everything, none of it happened. But because we were so behind in competition, we were asked as judges to, do overtime to catch up, to finish the whole competition with all the competitors or participants in a given schedule that was, So I worked from 9 a.m. until midnight.
Wow.
I mean, not literally nonstop, but we had breaks and lunch and stuff. But it was
Yes, of course.
Got up at 9 a.m. and finished at midnight.
Wow. Let's see. When you aren't teaching classes or doing performances, what do you like to do?
Hang out with my buddy, my son. Play, he is also very active, just like me. We always kick the ball around or throw the ball around and stuff. I like to watch a lot of sports. I watch just about, NBA, NFL, NHL, a lot of European soccer. That's pretty much, that's my passion. Yes, it's kind of gives me the sanity, the get unplugged from ballet, to kind of rejuvenate.
Yes.
And I also love to travel.
Of course, but with COVID, there's no traveling.
Yeah.
If you could travel to any place right now, what would it be?
Right now?
Yes.
London.
London.
Because I haven't been there for a few years, and I have so many students there, and it's would be always. It's always nice to kind of meet up with them and catch up with them and stuff.
Do you
But
have
also sorry. Also, I would like to go to Italy,
Italy? Nice.
to Venice, to Florence, those places.
What is your favorite part? What is your favorite place in Italy or London?
Well, I think the favorite place in London probably would be Covent Garden, where the ballet school is and where the opera house is. It's just, a very vibrant area, and sometimes it's a little bit overcrowded with all the tourists and stuff. So it's, when you are on a schedule, going to work, or from work, just running into these masses is kind of challenging, but it's still, I mean, it's amazing, such a beautiful place. But Italy, I would say Florence. My wife and I went there one year for Christmas and New Year's, and it was magical.
That sounds like so much fun. I've always wanted to travel for Christmas, just like take my entire family somewhere and just have like a magical Christmas.
Yeah, we got really lucky with the Florence because we showed up before Christmas, a few days before, and this kind of the center part of Florence where we stayed was fairly empty. So
Oh,
and then like Christmas Eve, also masses of people showed up, but we had a few days when the city was not. It was so awesome just to kind of walk the streets and find all kinds of different cool things.
um, so do you prefer to dance or to teach?
It is such a tricky question. When I was dancing, you are responsible for yourself. The saying, if you want something done well, do it yourself. I always felt like that when I was dancing. Like, I'm gonna put my best foot forward and I'm gonna, get it done. As a teacher, you're under this problem that, with a student, you cannot force them. Even if you force them per se, if they don't want it, they're not gonna do it. So one of my former bosses from London said, you can lead the horse to the water, but you cannot make the horse drink the water. And I find it so true that you can break it all down, you can explain it, you can prove it to the student that's how it should be done. But if he or she is not going to do it, so it's sort of, I love teaching, but in a lot of ways, even though maybe dancing was more challenging to me than teaching, because I wasn't one of them, like we call easy, talented, high flyer. I had to add everything to get it done. But dancing was somehow easier to me than teaching. And it's that fact that not every student is willing to.
Yes. If you could give one piece of advice to an aspiring ballet dancer, what would it be?
I would kind of say it would be probably advice, two-part advice. Once you need to love it. It needs to be like inside of your blood. Because, ballet, dance, arts, very often, you're not going to get rich on. Like, I don't know, you take NBA, kids come from poor backgrounds, they do 1 year in college, they go to NBA, they're set for life. That's their goal, oftentimes, yeah? In ballet, you need to love it because it's going to be your passion that will be the driving force. The second thing, never be satisfied, never doubt yourself.
That's amazing advice, I think, to everyone um, in any profession, I would say.
I always tell my students, if you don't believe in yourself, who will?
Of course.
Because it will be if you don't believe in yourself, it will be visible immediately. Because you'll be timid, tense, all that stuff.
I feel like in any situation, whenever you go into a job interview or an audition or just a room that has a lot of important minds, you have to go in with at least some sort of confidence, and because it really does shine through.
Oh, for sure. I mean, I've had so many situations in my, many years. The student is doing something pretty well. They go to competition to audition, and all of a sudden, what happened? Just they got nervous and they went back to their default, which was what they did before. Or, when I taught at Royal Ballet School, and we had assessments, exams at the end of the year. And usually those panels would be, assessing those students were who is who in European ballet, like Director of Royal Ballet, Director of English National Ballet, Birmingham Royal Ballet, Paris Opera Ballet School, blah, 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 blah. So they one by one walk in, they get introduced, and you can see the students' knees are going like this, they're shaking. It's like they're very close. And it was always, my first year I kind of clocked that you need to mentally prepare them that it's going to come, and somehow to give them some tools to, overcome that, because, if those people sit down and pick up their pencils and start dissecting you, it's unnerving. Especially if that, all these people who are, legends and stuff.
Yes.
Definitely tricky.
It's funny, I call people legends a lot, and being in Los Angeles when I first moved here, and we were in the airplane trying to find we came here a few months before, and we flew an airplane, and I looked down because it was dark and you could see all of the lights, and I was like, oh my gosh, every one of those people is an actor or an actress or a singer or some sort of something in the arts. And then when I came here, I realized almost no one is an actress or an actor. I've talked to so many people, and I think only like 10 of them have been in the entertainment industry, which is insane to me, but it's been really eye-opening, but I still do see everybody as like a legend of some sort.
I'm sure you run into a lot of people in LA for sure.
Oh yes, for sure. Well, thank you so much for doing this. This was amazing to sit down and talk to you. If you guys ever have any chance to take a class with him, at any point, if he ever does like another Worldwide Ballet, or if you want to go on to YouTube and see the Worldwide Ballet class, that class is absolutely amazing. He does an amazing job. And
too kind.
You're absolutely amazing. I loved your class. Being in LA, I've had to do my my ballet at my counter because there's no rehearsal spaces other than taking physical classes and having my mom be a teacher. I like to do it at the counter, and I've been using some of your routines to dance with because I loved them so much. But as I said, that was the end of our event for today, so thank you so much for watching, and I just want to remind you that since this is October, it is Cancer Awareness Month, so if you can donate, please do not feel like you have to, but if you want to, please visit www.performerswithpurposefoundation.com. Thank you so much for watching, and I really hope to see you soon. Bye!